Hello, my name is Eddie Stevens. I am the Director for Legal Education at the Center for Child Counseling and a board-certified marital and family attorney in Florida since 2004. We have put together this special content for our subscribers, and we are making it available for a one-time viewing to assist others in passing the Florida Marital and Family Law Board Certification exam. Last year, only 4 people who took the exam passed. Now, we have a great certification program, great speakers, great materials, over 1,500 people attend, and yet only 4 people passed. We kind of saw a need that needed to be addressed, so we could provide information that's more than just substantive, but could actually help people in increasing that passage rate. We would like to see a whole lot more than 4 people a year pass this test. I took the test in 2004, and my path was very interesting. I did not study 150 hours for it. In fact, when I took the test, I didn't even think I was going to pass it due to my lack of preparation. I had been an attorney for 5 years, and I had just quit my associate attorney job and started my own firm. I had budgeted 2 weeks to study for this exam. As things would have it, things got busy for me immediately, and that 2-week period was not used for studying. It was used for getting my law office off the ground. Shortly before the test, I thought, I am just not going to take it this year. I'm not ready. But someone convinced me to go ahead and take it just to see what it would be like, so I would be more prepared the next year. I locked myself in a room for a day, and I hand wrote every element to every statute and every important case. I took the exam, and I was very fortunate. I passed on my first go. I would not recommend this path to anyone. It's more of an illustration that you don't have to lock yourself in a cabin for 200 hours and study for this test. You might. Everybody is different, and everybody approaches the learning process a different way. For example, I know my learning process is I have to write something down. And if I write something down, it typically sticks in my head for a pretty long time. That is why, since I have passed board certification in 2004, I have taken the time to summarize every single family law case in Florida every month for the past 16 years. And by doing this, it helps me memorize and stay on top of the law. And these are my handwritten notes of every single case in Florida. And through that process, I have really been able to understand and develop a mastery of the substantive law. The core and sub-core areas are identified, and the scope of knowledge, family law is not the most difficult subject. You do have to know everything. You do have to know how to apply everything. But how you get there is really, everybody has a different path. It will make you a better attorney just studying for it. Because to pass this test, you really do have to know everything about the substantive law. And it's not just a recitation of the law, you have to show the application. So after I passed in 2004, the Florida bar president at the time, John White, reached out to me and asked me to serve on the board cert committee. So I had the experience of, for the next 6 years, writing and grading the exam. And I was also the chair of the board cert committee for a year. I thought it would be valuable to hear from many other chairs of the board cert committee, chairs of BSLE. We also have content from 3 of the 4 individuals who passed the 2020 exam. So we have, through our monthly CLE series, when we have guests on, I like to ask them about board certification. We have curated all of that material, and we have a program that is over an hour long. If you like what you see, this is all part of our family law CLE that we produce every month. While this content we're making free, if you like it, I suggest subscribing to our monthly family law CLE series. How you ultimately approach this test is up to you. There's a lot of advice givers. I would, just like anything, figure out what works for you and kind of discard the rest. Hopefully, through this program, you will find some real tips that will assist you in passing this exam. For those of you taking it in 2021, I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you enjoy this curated experience that we've put together for you. Good luck.
Fogel.
And I'm Scott Rubin.
And we are with the law firm of Fogel and Rubin. We have been board certified for a number of decades.
We have both been chair of the Family Law Certification Committee.
And we have both been chairs of the Board of Legal Specialization and Education, the Oversight Board for Board Certification. We've been asked today to present to you some suggestions that may assist you in preparing for the certification exam. I would like to start with recommending to each of you that you study in depth all rules of procedure, whether they be family, civil, or any other rules that may be applicable to marital and family law. That you equally spend time on all of the statutes that will apply in family law cases, not necessarily limited to Chapter 61, but other areas that are statutorily utilized in marital and family law cases.
As important as the rules and the statutes are, and they're the bedrock of what you need to know, application of the rules and statutes happens in the case law. And there are not all that many family law cases that get reported. You should be able to look at every one of them, at least for the past couple of years, but pay close attention to all of the family law decisions that have been reported where a member of the Marital and Family Law Certification Committee is involved. They're the ones who write the questions. We don't have professional test writers. Similarly, because an exam bank is used, which means that questions from prior years can be repeated, you should be looking for major cases involving prior committee members as well. Those fact patterns will often appear on the exam.
When I prepared for the certification exam, and when I have counseled others to prepare for the certification exam, it has been my recommendation that you consider your preparation as you would consider a consult with a new client. For example, when a new client seeks to ascertain during a consultation the likelihood of success if that client seeks relocation, you must know and must be prepared to discuss in detail during your response to an exam question on relocation the legal requirements and the factual requirements that would suggest to the court that you should prevail on that issue. If you cannot answer the question or give an opinion as to the likelihood of success of a client during a consultation, then you will have great difficulty answering that issue on an exam question. You're very much gearing your answers, as Scott will explain more so, to who it is the exam is asking you to step into the shoes of.
After the fact pattern, each of the essay questions of the exam will, in essence, assign a role to you. In what's known as the call of the question, you will be asked to be the judge, perhaps the judge's law clerk, perhaps the appellate court, perhaps the attorney for one party or another, and then asked to analyze the facts that you're given pursuant to the statutes and rules that apply. And so it's very critical that you read that and answer from that point of view. If, for example, you are asked to be the judge and to not just analyze the different positions, but to reach a conclusion as to what the result should be, and you instead analyze it from one party's point of view and just advocate for that one party, you're not going to do well on the exam.
Finally, a suggestion that we have found helpful to those we have counseled on preparation for the exam is to determine the wheat from the chaff. What I mean by that is, if in fact the question addresses primarily a particular topic such as relocation, do not focus on extraneous facts that are provided in the fact pattern. That is, for want of a better term, a red herring. That is what the committee does in drafting its questions to determine whether or not you in fact are capable and competent to recognize the issue and the facts that pertain to that particular issue. And Scott will give you further examples of that.
Now, Terry told you that one of the examples she gave was a question about relocation of a minor child. That fact pattern could well have contained information concerning the premarital asset of one of the parties. The premarital asset of that party and whether the other party has any claim to that asset might end up being an issue in the party's dissolution of marriage case. But if the call of the question is directing you strictly to relocation, not only do you not need to discuss the premarital asset, but you should not.
And by eliminating those facts that are not relevant to the question being posed, you will save yourself a great deal of time, and you will have the opportunity to complete the answer to the question.
So you've been board certified for a long time in marital and family law, which I think is an amazing credential on your resume. Do you have any tips for those of us who are maybe looking at that point in our career where we're thinking like, should we take the test? Should we not take the test? Is it important, not important? Or just any tips of the trade on how to consider taking the test?
I highly recommend it if you're going to be spending any time in family law, because it's the one way that you can ensure that you will be at the cutting edge of your field. One of our obligations to our clients for going to hold ourselves out as experts in this area is to know what it is we're doing. So being board certified to me is a very important representation of your credentials. And don't be upset if you take the test and don't pass it the first time. There's many people that don't pass it the first time. But you will learn more preparing for the test than you will probably ever learn. I know when I was studying for the exam, back in the dinosaur age, all I kept saying to myself was, oh my God, I didn't know this. Because we get pigeonholed into doing certain types of case, and we can do it in our sleep. But to be board certified, you have to have a working knowledge of all other aspects of the family law arena, which involves a lot of different chapters of the statute books, a lot of the rules, a lot of the judicial administration, and all those other aspects that we don't deal with. So studying for the test will make you a better lawyer for sure. And I highly recommend it. And you should be taking the test. It's a pain in the neck, but it's worth it.
Going back to board cert, some people are intimidated just because of the passage rate seems to be kind of skewed.
Yeah.
What tips would you give people that may be nervous or maybe taking the test next year?
Well, that is a challenge. The rate has been formidable for certain in terms of that low rate, whether it be less than 10% or whatever. What my encouragement would be that as I was on the committee and we saw people like Tom Sasser come through and people like that and just blew it out of the water, that if you're really prepared and do great work, you're going to be fine on it. And what I mean by that is, I'll be honest, I didn't pass it the first time. And I went back and I say that candidly because, I believe in transparency, but I redoubled my efforts. And I mean, I realized the next year it took a year. It wasn't those things. I had a practice. I was married. I didn't have children yet, but it wasn't those, oh, you can pull it off in 3 months. It literally took a year of working my way through. Brenda Abrams has that wonderful set, looking at that time at the Red Books, looking at all the appellate decisions over the last year. At that time, I started buying that green book, the Florida
The annual.
Law Weekly. Yeah, the annual. Mm-hmm. And so I bought, it's really neat. I've continued to buy every year. I've got this complete library going back to 1990. It's really cool. Kind of nerdy, but I remember it started in 1990 and I read every case from 90 to 93. So, I mean, I felt like there was no way they would not let me through that next year. And it was probably because I didn't get it the first year. And I said, a lot of people can say that. A lot of great people in the academy didn't get in the academy the first time. And it made me realize it does take that much work, but at the same time, there's 300 lawyers or whatever it is now in the state who are board certified. So it certainly, by all means, can be done. And it's been invaluable. It makes you a better lawyer. And the best advice I ever got when I started out there was a guy who's passed away, but he was in the county, and he said, don't be one of these generalists. I think in the Keys, particularly, at least through the 70s and into the 80s, you could be a generalist. And guys did wills. It was like kind of the small town Atticus Finch kind of thing. They had jury trials, they do civil trials, they do a divorce. They would do everything. But then as the 80s progressed, people realized the desire to get specialized. And now you don't really find generalists. In this county, I'm sure yours the same way. People do one thing generally and do it, relatively well or not, but specialize. And certainly board certification is part of that.
Yes, yeah. I just tell people, hey, if I could pass it, hopefully
I kind of the same way. I mean, I'm not smarter than anybody else. I might work harder, but it's formidable, but it certainly can be done when you realize how much it takes.
And going through the process, even if you don't pass, makes you a better lawyer.
There's no question. Yeah.
And I don't think anyone I've talked to has ever said something contradictory to that.
I absolutely agree. There's no question. I remember, you probably can say this, is there's no better feeling those first months or year after taking the test, because you walk into court and there's no question you can't answer about the statute or about the case law.
At least for a couple of years till something becomes gray.
That's
and then you serve on the board cert committee and you relearn it all again and again.
Relearn it because you have to learn it again, which you've done. So that's to be commended too.
And I think that's probably the hardest committee to work on out there.
Took a lot of work, right? Tremendous amount of work.
Yeah, writing and grading and peer review. It's a lot. Becoming board cert is a big deal, and it's more than just a test. And I think people don't realize how important, for example, peer review is, and peer review can prevent you from becoming board cert
or staying board cert. And
every
people
5
don't
years.
realize, and people don't realize, particularly in a small county, I'm in front of all my judges all the time. I mean, there's only 4, or there's actually, I think there's only 4 circuit judges in the county.
Wow.
So I know all of them very well in terms of I've been in front of them for decades, or as long as they've been on the bench. And so to your point, peer review in terms of judicial review is a huge deal.
And you are a big fan of board certification. Can you tell us when you became board certified in marital family law and kind of how that has impacted your career?
Yeah, I became board certified, I think it was in 1988. You were 17 years old. And I became board certified. And that year when I took the exam, I think there were maybe 8 or 10 of us all together. And it was incredibly competitive. And I studied really, really hard for it. At that point, I felt really good because it's a validation. To me, with my background, I had to work very, very hard for everything that I ever accomplished. So when I got the certification, that's one of the high points of my career back then, because there were not a lot of certified lawyers. So, and a lot of lawyers initially were grandfathered in. I wasn't one of those lawyers that got grandfathered in, who didn't have to take the certification. So that was it. And that was the step that I needed to then get into the Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, which happened the following year. So that was a very important time in my life.
And would you give, like, if you were mentoring, what tips would you give someone about board certification, or how would you tell them to approach that test?
Okay, well, first of all, even lawyers who are not, there are a lot of lawyers who are not board certified, and there are a lot of lawyers who are not in the academy who are still some of the best lawyers around. So it's not that you need to be certified to really be a great or a good lawyer, because there are a lot of lawyers who are really, really good who just don't have that, and they're doing just fine. I think that if you want to be certified, you need to be really mindful of the law, the trends of the law. You need to have a book, or you have to have all the updated cases, because certification is very big on the updated cases. And Eddie, I know you do that. You've been compiling that for years. So I think you have to read every Florida Law Weekly, make note of the cases. You don't have to memorize the names of the cases, but look at the trends. And nowadays, you know, the trends are most telling, more so than in the past. In the past, when I first started, the opinions, there were very few reversals. There were not a lot of opinions. And basically, when a trial judge ruled, they were not caught up in technicalities like they are today with reversals. So, like, for instance, if you don't lay out all the elements of why you're awarding permanent alimony, it's going to be reversed on appeal. In the old days, you were awarded permanent alimony because there was a disparity in earnings, and it was a long-term marriage, and that was the end of it, and it was affirmed. So I think
just had to cite Conagris, right?
Right. Yeah. So, you know, when they talk about equitable distribution could have been anything. It just had to be equitable. It wasn't necessarily equal. So, you know, so everybody used to cite Conagris, and of course they misspoke the name. It was Kenacaris and all the other names they used, and some forgot it. And you know, but the judge said, well, it has to just be equitable. And so an 80-20 to me is equitable. Now you can't do that. So I think if you want to be certified, you need to make up your mind a couple of years in advance that you really need to focus on getting there, and not worry if you don't pass the exam. Just, you go in, learn the law, relax, take it, and if you don't pass it, you take it again and go from there. In fact, that's one of the only things that I have hanging on my wall from my career is my first certification. It's kind of yellow by now. It's very yellow. I think all the print is faded off of it, but I know what it means.
I think that's probably one of my proudest achievements as well.
Yeah.
Today we have a special guest, one of the 4 folks who passed the board certification test this year for marital and family law, attorney from Boca Raton, Peter Tramador. Peter, are you with us?
I'm here, Eddie. How are you?
I'm doing great. Peter, first, congratulations on your board certification.
Well, thank you.
Only 4 people passed the test this year, so you are certainly in the minority. And I wanted to use this opportunity to kind of ask you a couple of questions about the test, what you thought about it, and any tips you may have for future test takers.
Sure. Well, Eddie, you know, the test was difficult this year. There's no question about it. And the tips are to start preparing early. I think the conventional wisdom is to begin preparing sometime in December, early December, which is what I did. And the preparation really is, first of all, to attend the certification review course in Orlando every year, where you receive the red books, which is a summary of Florida law that may or may not be tested on the exam. And then you also have the Tips and Nibbles seminar, which is at the cert review, which is worth doing. And one of the things that you learn there is, of course, that there's always an ethics question on the exam. And so that's something to really zone in on. And in terms of preparing for that, you have, you know, the bounds of advocacy from the Florida Bar for marital and family lawyers, and also the Florida Rules of Professional Conduct. So that's something to know pretty much inside and out when you're preparing for the exam, because you know that one of the 5 essays will be on ethics, and that they will have testing on both of those items and areas of the law. So that's one significant tip right off the bat.
Now, the test is a number of essay questions, true and false, multiple choice. And as a past chair of the board that created the test, I have a lot of experience in writing those questions and grading them.
Sure.
From a recent test taker perspective, did you think it was a fair test?
I thought it was a hard test because of some areas of law would not be readily apparent that you would think they would be on the exam. And so really, when you're preparing, it's important not only to have the green book, which are the cases from the last year, to order from Florida Law Weekly, approximately $100 or so. You want to order this and have an advanced copy in paperback as well, but also to go under and study some of the more esoteric areas of marital and family law. And it's also good to take a look and review the Florida Bar book on Florida dissolution of marriage. And so that is a significant tip. Those topics that are covered in this book are not necessarily in the red books that you will be getting at cert review. And so you really do need to take a additional step and go a little further above and beyond what's provided at cert review for the potential test takers.
So the board cert committee communicates to the test takers all the core subjects and the sub-core subjects. Do you think the test stuck to those areas of law?
For the most part, I do think that the test stuck to those areas of law. And again, including some of the more esoteric areas of marital and family law that might not be in the day-to-day practice of a family law practitioner, and that you wouldn't know necessarily without really studying and preparing for the test. And so not only the core, but the sub-core areas are important to incorporate into your study regime.
Would you mind kind of telling us about your study regime and how you went about this task of getting ready for this?
Sure. And so it's a couple hours during the day or in the evening that you have to carve out in order to properly prepare, and really weekends, full weekends leading up to the exam. And so it's a substantial number of hours that you have to put in order to properly prepare for the exam.
And a lot of people don't use case names in the exam because I don't think it helps you if you do, and if you get it wrong, it penalizes you. But do you think you need to know every element of every law that affects those core and subcore groups?
No, you certainly don't need to know every element of every case and the case names. However, as you know, there's a very heavy emphasis on the more recently decided cases, perhaps in the last year or 2 years, which are incorporated through all areas. And again, this is really the book that you need to look at and review in order to understand and prepare for this test on the more recent and notable cases which have been decided in marital and family law over the last couple of years.
What about those cases that are different among districts? Like, for example, in the 4th DCA, we look at actual ability when it comes to attorney's fees, when some other DCAs look at relative ability. Are those important to know?
Yeah, it's important to be able to distinguish those if there are splits in the various districts on important areas, like 6116 fees or anything of that nature.
And I have heard from a lot of people, especially people who were not as fortunate in past, but just the fact of taking the test and studying it made them better lawyers. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, Eddie, I mean, it certainly can't hurt to study and learn more law, even if you don't pass the exam on the first try around. I mean, there's a certain degree of luck when you're taking this as well. And so it's a worthwhile experience to prepare for the test, although very time consuming and not without sacrifices.
Any other tips that you can offer our viewers today?
In terms of actually taking the test, it's important, like any standardized test, to really keep careful tabs on the time in the testing room itself, presuming that there's a physical in-person test in the years ahead. There are large clocks, and you really have to budget your time on those clocks per section of the test to make sure you don't run out of time. The timing is tight. You have to go quickly. You can't spend too much time pondering on any one question or any one essay as you go through this.
And did you take the test by the blue books, or did you use the computer?
So I used the computer. I would say that 99% of all the test takers, at least during last year's administration of the exam, used their computer. If you have even minimal typing skills, I think it's very important to use the computer as opposed to the blue book. However, if you're taking the blue book exam, you'll be sitting there in a room alone with yourself or maybe one other person, and so that might be a benefit if you like isolation.
When I took it 16 years ago, it was the opposite, because everybody was scared their computers would get locked out, and it was new at the time, and most of us did the longhand blue books. So it's amazing how technology changes that. For every statute and rule that we have in Chapter 61 and the other ones that impact us, do you think you need to know those rules by heart?
You need to be very familiar with them, particularly the Florida Family Law Rules of Procedure, before you're taking the test. There are, of course, many rules which correlate to the statutes itself, and so understanding how they interact, I think, is very important, particularly on the essay questions.
And you have just started your new practice. Congratulations. And becoming board cert is certainly a boost to that. Do you think having that logo and those credentials have given you a boost to the launch of your firm?
Sure, it certainly helps. It can't hurt. Fundamentally, it's a marketing tool to a large extent, and we'll see what happens. But it's nice to have it. Now,
would you recommend this daunting task to other family law attorneys?
Yes, I think it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile to, at a minimum, gain additional knowledge through the study process and through hearing the speakers at board cert. And if you've got a chance to pass it, you try to pass it and you see what happens.
And even if you don't pass it, I think there's some benefits going through the process, because again, it forces you to learn things that you might not otherwise know.
It also forces you to have the initial qualifications, which are trying cases, submitting the applications to your peers and to judges, and all of that, I think, has some benefit as well, aside and apart from studying and actually taking the exam.
Did you get your app in far enough in that you were already approved to take the test, or when you take the test, did you not know if you had been
So
past clearance?
I had it in early, and that's another piece of advice, which is to get the application in as soon as you can, to also follow up with the judicial references that you're sending your review to, including calling the judicial assistants from time to time to confirm that the request for the referral has actually been received and is being processed. Probably wouldn't be a great idea to have no responses back from certain references that you're submitting to the committee.
Well, if the committee doesn't hear from your references, they have ways to deal with that. And for example, they look at all your trials you've listed, and they could send peer review requests to judges that you didn't put as a reference. I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for your time today, and congratulations on this pillar of your career. It is really an impressive feat, and we're all very proud of you. And thank you for assisting others who may be taking the test in the future.
Thank you, Eddie. Much appreciated. Take care.
And today we have one of the 4 who passed the 2020 board cert exam, Andrew Lieberman. Andrew, are you here?
I'm here.
Andrew, thank you for joining us today, and congratulations on passing this year.
Thank you.
Andrew, you have been an attorney since 2007. What made you decide to sit for the family law board cert test?
So ever since I started my own firm and started focusing on family law, I think it was about 2012, and I knew there was a certification. I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be board certified and specialize in marital and family law.
And when you decided to take the test and take the plunge, what did you do to start to get ready for that?
So the first time I applied was back in 2018 for the 19 test, but then my wife was pregnant and we had the baby on the day of certification review. So I made the decision to push the test to the next year, 2020. So it gave me a little bit of an advantage that I knew I was going to be admitted, or I was going to be approved. And so the tip I would say is start early, give yourself a really long runway, because I hadn't taken a test since 2007, and here I am in 2019, 2020 preparing for a test. So I started in September, and just looking at the materials, looking at what was there, and figuring out how am I going to understand all of the material in a way that it could be remembered. That took itself a long time. And so I want to make sure if I start in September, I had time for a wasted day, or it wasn't a big deal if I thought I didn't make progress that day, because I always had all these months ahead of time. And so I think that was very helpful to me. I spread out the studying too. I was studying 1 day a week. So on the weekend from 9 to 5, I would go in and study.
How many hours do you think you put in studying for this test?
Over 200. I wish that I billed it like I just so I knew exactly. But keeping track of time, I think, would help too, because people told me you should study 125 hours. And I guess when I knew I was studying, when I got close to 100 or 125, I kind of felt that gave me an advantage. Like at least I put the work in, or I knew I was around in the ballpark.
So after studying for 2 years for this test, going into it, did you feel comfortable that you were going to pass?
It wasn't 2 years. It wasn't 2 years. I put it off, so I knew I was going to get approved. So before I started,
and when you say approved, that means approved for clearance to sit for the test. Yes. And you pass peer review and they check all your credentials. It doesn't mean you're board certified. It just means if you pass the test, you'll become board certified.
Right. So I knew I still had to fill out the short form, but nothing changed. So I knew I'd be approved. So I think that was a little bit of an advantage, because people don't get approved to take the test until usually early January. So if you start in early January, I think you're at a disadvantage.
Or some people don't even know they've passed clearance when they take the test, and they take the test conditionally, which would terrify me.
Right, put all that studying in, that wouldn't be fun. So I really studied from September of 2019 through March of 2020.
So not only studying, but get the app in early so you
Yeah.
get that clearance as quickly as possible.
I would say as you're applying at that same time, you should be looking at what materials you need to read and review.
And they tell you the subjects, they give you the core subjects, they give you the sub-course subjects. And do you think you have to know everything in those categories?
Yes, I think that the sub-core topic there was listed military, and that happened to be an essay. So do not skimp on the sub-core topics.
Yes, and when I used to serve as the chair of the committee, the board cert committee, so I have many years of writing and grading that test. When you took it, did you think it was a fair test?
Yes, I think they told you everything that was going to be on there on that outline. It was extremely difficult, but it was fair. They did tell you everything was going to be on there.
And you have a couple essay questions, you have an ethics question, true and false, and multiple choice. What did you find the hardest?
The essays were by far the hardest. The first 3 essays in the morning were by far the hardest essays I've done on an exam.
Now, did you do them handwritten or did you go to the computer?
Computer.
Did most people use, when I took it, most of the people were in the room doing the blue books, but that was in 2004, before technology is what it is today. What was the percentage of people taking it on their computer?
I think everyone was on the computer.
Did you have any issues with the software that they put on your computer to lock out every other program?
So I had an issue because I guess, like I said, I deferred. So I got an email that last year. And so when I tried to sign in, I was using that email and password, and I got a little bit nervous about it. But then I found the new email. And so that was the only difficulty I had with the software. Make sure you have the right password and year and all that.
Did you take any days off before the test to lock yourself in a room and study, or?
Yeah, so I think like mid-February, I started just really focusing on the test. It was hard to concentrate on much else. And really, I think March 1st, I just told myself, I'm done. March 1st, I'm just doing the test. I'm just studying for the test.
Did you
and the test is on March 13th.
Did you memorize any case names?
No.
Why not?
I didn't think the case names would matter. I thought it was the content and the substance that would matter.
They don't unless you get them wrong. So it's good not typically not to take that risk unless you're sure. But
Right.
You pretty much need to know every single element of every rule and statute, don't you?
Yeah, so I memorized, I had 11 acronyms, and I couldn't find an acronym for the child time sharing factors. So I just memorized the child time sharing factors. Somehow I grouped them together, and I was really impressed that I could do that, but I didn't think that was possible. And I just want to tell you, like, if you're taking the test, I wrote all those acronyms out, and I don't know that I used all the acronyms. I don't know that I went through and wrote everything down. I really went through and analyzed everything there, and nothing I did was, exactly how I planned it would go.
Did you write your essays in a narrative form, or did you use more of an outline bullet approach?
Narrative. I did not outline.
And if you knew someone that was taking the test next year, what advice would you give them?
Like I said before, start early. The materials in the board certification review are very good. I made handwritten flashcards that really helped me remember, and it makes you think about what you put on those flashcards. I read the 2018 cases and the 2019 cases. I think maybe what was the most helpful that someone told me was the test isn't really about memorization. It's about knowing. And I think that's very true, because you can memorize all this, but they're going to give you a fact pattern. It's very difficult. And it's going to be different from what you've been doing if you're just memorizing. So I think reading those cases if you really read the cases from the year that you're taking the test or the year before, really think about how those judges wrote those answers and how that analysis went. I think that would be very helpful.
Because the test takers don't just expect you to recite elements, they expect you to recite all of the elements and then apply them.
Right. And I think from my standpoint, it was more about the application than reciting the elements. I think the application was far more important.
And what did you think of the ethics question?
I thought the ethics question was simpler than the other questions. So if you want to talk about the questions, I think there's going to be, how it was for me, there's 3 questions, and whatever the topics were, they were very complex. Like, for example, for alimony, it wasn't just need and ability to pay. Very complex, very subtle. And there was 3 questions kind of like that. But then the last 2 questions, I thought the ethics question was straightforward. I don't think they're trying to trick you there. And then there's another question I thought was also straightforward. So I don't know if they intended it that way, but 3 of the essays were incredibly difficult. And then the 2 of the essays I thought were very manageable.
In the ethics essay, is it still just try to spot 10 ethical issues?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're just going through and for our essay, they gave you this attorney who just made a lot of very bad choices and you're just kind of calling him out on it.
Did you read any other materials other than the 2 years of cases and the red books from Board Cert?
The statutes. I thought the statutes were very important. I thought the statutes also were more straightforward than the materials. I think that you should start with the statutes.
Anything else you want to say to our audience about this test, taking it, or why you should take it?
So if you're going to take it, I thought it was very stressful, but I didn't even want to go back in for the second half, but go back in, you can pass, it's doable. And I don't know, I'm very happy that I passed. I think it's nice to be able to say I'm board certified. I'm specialized in family law.
So it is kind of an exclusive club, and only 4 people passed, and I know a whole lot more people took it than that. So Andrew, congratulations on your achievement. We're very proud of you, and we can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. I just want to everyone know, like, you can study very hard. I know people study very hard and they still didn't pass. And, just make sure you study. And even if you fail, it doesn't say anything about you. You're taking this really difficult test, and just taking it, I think, is a big deal. Just taking it says something about you. Plus, it makes you a better attorney, don't you think? Oh, yeah. The studying, I learned a lot of things, how to do it the correct way. And that's I think it just helps the profession in general. Did you have a study partner, or did you do this all on your own? So I studied on my own. I never studied with somebody. I did have people that I knew that took it, and I would talk to them. And I think that was good for the psychological value, to know you're all in the same boat. You're all wondering what's going to happen. You're all stressing out, and that's very helpful. And you even talk a little bit about the topics to make sure you're on the right track also. During your break, did you talk about the first half of the test with other people? Oh, yeah, I definitely did. It made me feel better. Some people think it makes them feel worse. But again, I didn't think that was talking about is helpful, because everybody thought the same thing. That's kind of how it felt. So it's a super hard test, but it's fair, and you need to know everything. Yes, and I think even if you know everything, you still have to know it. You have to apply it, and that's really the key. I kind of compared it to when you're giving a consultation and they're asking you all these questions. You have to know those answers. Andrew, thank you so much for your time today, and we appreciate you giving us some tips. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome a very special guest, one of the 4 passers of the most recent board certification test, Kelly Albanese. Kelly, are you with us?
I am.
And congratulations on becoming board certified in this most recent round.
Thank you so much.
It is truly an exciting thing, and to be one of the 4 people that passed is remarkable. So congratulations.
Very exciting. Thank you again.
Well, I believe the best people to give tips on how to pass this test are the people who just passed. And I thank you for answering my call and was wondering what tips you can share or what helped you pass this really tough exam.
Absolutely. So I would definitely suggest and advise reading through the Florida Law Weekly collected family law cases for the past 2 years. And, you know, a lot of the cases are dealing with dependency. You can skip over those because that's not on the test. But as for all of the other cases, read them all, highlight them. You will see a pattern of what the courts are getting brought in, the appellate courts are having brought in front of them over and over again. And the test, you will see that a lot of the fact patterns come from those cases out of the collected cases. So in January, they release the paper copy for the year before. Go ahead and order that. You don't need the hard copy to start highlighting. Order that and just go through all those cases is a must.
What do you think about how you approach studying the statutes?
That you'll see again. They refer to certain statutes. I mean, the time sharing, alimony, those ones know like the back of your hand. But I also got through LexisNexis. I don't know the exact off the top of my head, but just it comes with 2 books, and I can send you that information later. But it's just a collection of all of the family law statutes, and just go through that at least once. It'll give you a refresher, and that's pretty helpful as well.
And there were only 4 people that passed this year, and there was a lot of criticism that the test is too hard. I passed back in 2004, and then I was on the committee that wrote and graded the test, and we always thought it was hard but fair. Now that you've studied for it and passed it, what do you think about the exam?
It's hard, but I think it's fair. It took me 3 times, to be honest. So I took it back in 2017. I was close, but just didn't get that, I saw once I reviewed it, because they give you a chance to review your answers, why I had, come short. I couldn't take it in 2018 because I had a baby at the end of February and the test was 2 weeks later. And then I took it again in 2019, and honestly, it just wasn't smart. I shouldn't have taken it at that time because I was in the middle of moving. My kid's first birthday, just again, bad timing. But this year, I happened to be pregnant. And so I just, from January 1st until I took the test, I made sure I studied at least a couple hours every single day. I maybe took off a day here or there, but that was what my focus was. And I really think that if you just study enough, they're really not trying to trick you on the questions. I don't think, again, after taking it 3 times, it's hard, but they want to make sure that they, are weeding out, and, now, you can call yourself, kind of an expert in the field, and they want to make sure that you're qualified to do that, because people, already, it's only been a couple months. I mean, people really look to you as, being able to help them now that you have this extra level of certification. So
be careful. You also now have an extra layer of liability too.
Exactly.
Even though that has never been an issue in my career. Did you think they tell you what's on the test with the core topics and the sub core topics? Do you think it was true to those areas of law?
Yes, I do. I followed those. And another little tip is, I think every single time I took the test, there was one multiple choice question on surrogacy. So just review that statute at least once, know that statute, and I can almost, I can't guarantee, but pretty certain that if you know the statute, you'll be able to get one multiple choice question right.
And during the lunch break, did you talk to anyone about the test?
Nope.
Did you take it by computer, or did you do the old blue books?
Definitely computer.
Did you have any issues with the software that they put on your computer?
Never once. Nope.
It's interesting how things change, because in 2004, the minority of the people used their computer, and
Right.
the rest of us did it the old blue book fashion. I'd be
Yeah,
interested to see
I
if
would
my
definitely suggest doing the computer, and even when you do the little class that they offer before the big CLE in January, everybody suggests you want to type it, because if they have trouble reading your handwriting, that could cost you points.
Did you write in a narrative answer, or did you give a bullet answer?
I did it in broke it down into paragraphs, dealing with the issue of alimony, and then the issue of, if they asked, I think there was something about the Hague, the Hague Convention issue. And I underlined those and then just wrote those out in each. So less of a narrative. It was kind of a narrative when I broke it down, but I definitely made it where they knew what topic I was talking about in each part.
And if you sign up for this test, chances are you're going to fail it.
Right.
And you were brave enough to tell us about your 2 previous attempts.
Yep.
Were you ever discouraged for this and said, this isn't for me, or?
No, just because I knew the first time it was actually encouraging that I got as close as I did, and it kind of pushed me, knowing, okay, this is more doable, because everybody has, you're so scared because it is so tough. The second time I knew it was there was no chance, because I just knew that I didn't prepare enough. And then, if I hadn't passed it this third time, knowing how much time I put into it, and then I really dedicated myself and took every single day to at least, look over something, I probably would have been a little rough if I didn't pass this time, because I don't know what I could do different.
So you were pretty happy to get that email?
Yes, very. I read it a few times because I was like, am I reading this right?
Well,
another thing is, not to interrupt, but we all took the bar, and and that's what I went back to, is what did I do to help pass with that? And I'm very big on, if I write something down, it helps me remember it. So, and not typing, but actually writing pen. So I wrote note cards, and then I would keep reviewing those note cards. And that was what I did for the bar as well. So kind of look back at that and think, how did you pass the bar? And kind of go with that same strategy, I think, is a good way to handle it.
Writing out longhand works really well for me. Once I do that,
Yeah.
It's pretty much stuck in my head.
Exactly.
Do you have any other tips you have to offer folks that may be thinking about taking the test, maybe people that are scared of taking the test, scared of failing it?
It's give it a try. The worst that can happen is you fail, and you just you can try again. Even just the honor of being allowed, I know people that have applied and haven't even been given the chance to take it. So just being able to, have a peer review and pass all of that to take it is an accomplishment in and of itself, I think. I would definitely suggest go, because the first year I didn't go to the CLE in Orlando. I just got the books. Definitely suggest going to that CLE. Sit in the first 2 rows. They let you, they have those dedicated to the test takers, and just pay attention. You can get the slides afterwards, and make sure, the speakers will start to have repetitive things as well that they talk about. And those tend to be things that are brought up on the exam as well. So.
Well, Kelly, congratulations. Your perseverance has paid off, and thank you for sharing your advice with everybody.
Thank you.
We wish you the best of luck.
All right, thanks.
Hello, I'm here to talk to you about becoming board certified as a marital and family law attorney in the state of Florida. Why should you become board certified? I think there's 2 primary reasons. Either you're motivated by enriching your life personally, or you might be motivated for monetary reasons, and we're going to discuss both of those. I became board certified because I perceived it as a challenge. I wanted to expand my horizons as a marital and family law attorney and challenge myself to become like some of the people that I would see at lectures and around the state that were preeminent. That's why I did it. I can tell you that during the process, it was very rewarding. Some people say the most you know about law is when you take the bar exam. The most you will ever know about marital and family law is once you complete studying for the marital and family law certification examination. You'll know about the substantive law, you'll know about the case law, about the rules, and about evidence and professional conduct. So for that reason, I would encourage you to do it. I would also tell you, during the course of becoming board certified, I created many new friendships that I've maintained over the decades. Well, that's the reason for becoming board certified from a personal enrichment perspective. From a business perspective or a business model, why become board certified? Well, the designation of being board certified will enable you to secure clients you might not otherwise secure. Attorneys from out of state, attorneys from out of town are more likely to refer clients to you. The types of clients and the types of cases that you try will become higher profile, more exciting cases, more interesting cases. And as a result of that, there are going to be cases where you deal with more moneyed individuals. In turn, you will earn more money. And because you're board certified, you can justify an enhanced hourly rate when you appear before a judge. If you're like me, you might want to become board certified because the family law section of the Florida Bar requires you to be board certified before you lecture at a family law sanctioned event. And if you're interested in becoming a member of the Academy of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, it is a prerequisite. These are just some of the reasons for becoming board certified. And for these reasons and many others that my colleagues who are board certified on this video will talk to you about, I encourage you to accept the challenge I'm throwing out to you and become board certified. Good luck.